much for joining us tonight. My name is Mazwe Majola. I'm from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. We develop, we produce, we empower, we inspire leaders because we have realized that if we can focus on leadership, maybe things will be improved in our families, in our societies, in our communities, in our institutions, in our country, yes, and globally everywhere. We meet here every Wednesdays, same time at 6 p.m. to discuss leadership. And we've been doing this for a while now. Since 2020, we have been meeting every week discussing leadership. And thank you so much for joining us again tonight. We've got a great speaker. I will be introducing him shortly. But thank you for joining us, because we are here as leaders coming from different spheres of life. We've got academics from different institutions or in universities. We've got great leaders from public sector, from private sector. We've got community leaders, religious leaders, professionals from all walks of life, just to come here to empower each other, to inspire each other as leaders, to correct each other and admonish each other and encourage each other, because as we always discuss every week, that leaders is not for faint-hearted, but leaders is for courageous and resilient leaders. And that's exactly what we'll be discussing tonight. So thank you for tuning in. We are going to have a wonderful session. May I welcome our members and our regulars, those men and women who are here every week or as often as they can. We learn a lot from each other. These are super master classes for us as leaders and those who aspire to be leaders. As I've said, mostly really here are more people who are leaders already. So it's a community of leaders, peers talking to other peers. It's wonderful just to learn from each other. But a special welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. If you are here for the first time, thank you so much for joining, and please feel at home. This is a safe space. This is where leaders meet, and yeah, we just discuss issues relating to leaders. So don't be diffident, don't hold back, don't be shy. We'd like to hear from you, so do participate. We will invite, or rather, the speaker will address us, and then once the speaker has addressed us, only then we can ask questions or then discuss and have that wonderful conversation. So yes, relax, enjoy yourselves, and let's talk leadership. Tonight we've got my brother, my professor, Professor Tinyiko Maluleka. Is not a stranger in this platform. He has addressed us before, and we learned so much last time when he came to address us, and we are so grateful and humbled and honored that in his busy schedule he found time to come and just mingle with us, but also to come and empower us and inspire us. So Professor Tinyiko Maluleka is a Vice Chancellor and the principal at the Tshwane University of Technology. And prior that, he had several positions, many positions. For instance, he served in the following executive management roles. He was a deputy executive dean. Also, he served as a dean. He was also an executive director, research, and deputy registrar at UNISA. I'm happy that my professor Zita is here, but I don't know whether it was Maluleka during Zita's time or Zita had left after that. But I know that you know each other very well. And he also was an advisor at some stage, was an advisor to the Vice Chancellor and Principal at the University of Pretoria, but also a Deputy Vice Chancellor for internationalization, student affairs and advancement, also at University of Johannesburg. He is a visiting professor or a research fellow to many different universities, including Hamburg University in Germany, University of Vienna in Austria, University of Nairobi in Kenya, Calvin University in USA, University of Helsinki, that is in Finland, University of Lausanne in Switzerland, University of Leiden in Sweden, University of Johannesburg in Gauteng, or sorry, University of Johannes Gautenberg, that is in Germany, and then Emory University in Atlanta. So he holds many different portfolios. It's got very long, as you expect, a CV and a profile. But my professor, I'll ask for indulgence that maybe let's just use your time more, because we're using what online here, which is it can stop anytime. So we are time bound. So if maybe we can focus on that, but most importantly, on what you'll be discussing tonight, or what you'll be addressing us about tonight. He is just one of his, because he's an author, has raised many publications and books, but the book that he has just released is The Faces and Phases of Resilience. That is why tonight we've asked him to come and address us on resilient leadership. So mostly what will be, I expect what we'll be talking about, it'll be more from his new book, which will be inviting you and encouraging you to buy and read. Some of us have bought, have read. It's a wonderful book and really very commendable. So, or recommendable. So thank you so much, my Professor Maluleka, for availing yourself tonight. Here are your leaders, and here are your scholars, and here are people want to hear you. Over to you, Prof. Maluleka. Thank you.
Good evening, Professor Majola. I was not yet unmuted, so I spoke alone for a while. It is a real honor and privilege for me to speak to such a distinguished audience, led by a person as distinguished as yourself. I have followed your work, especially the work of this institute, for a long time, and I'm in awe of your focus, and I almost said your resilience in staying on this topic of leadership and exploring it from as many angles as possible. I am also honored to hear that Professor Zide is here. I'm sure that there are other very significant leaders in our midst, and it is for me humbling. I have tried to check how many we are, and I see we are at least more than 30, and it's really an honor for me. I am not going to give an elaborate lecture on the topic that we have, but as Professor Majola rightly said, I will dabble into the book that was released earlier this month, actually. It was released officially on the 31st of March, but was only available perhaps a week or two ago in bookshops. So I'll use it a lot, in part because in the absence of sufficient focused time, it became easier for me to talk on leadership and resilience from that point of view. Formal resilience studies generally originate from the discipline of psychology, especially developmental psychology and child psychology. I am aware that since the 1970s, there has been a rather tremendous interest into why and how some people and some children in particular are more resilient than others. Others who face the same adverse conditions with them at the same time. In other words, why is it some people in prison, in a concentration camp, in a ghetto, are more resilient than others when in fact they are facing the same conditions in which others simply crumble and succumb? In his classic Man's Search for Meaning, German psychologist Viktor Frankl suggested that persons who are likely to be resilient in the face of hostile environments are those with a deeper, more far-reaching sense of meaning than that is in fact deeper than the hostile conditions they face. As a concentration camp survivor himself, Viktor Frankl had observed and argued that concentration camp inmates with a strong and more transcendent sense of purpose were more likely and more able to survive the perils of concentration camp life, which included present and real danger of death at any time. That such people with a sense of purpose were more likely than those without such a sense of purpose and meaning to survive. Now, if Frankl suggested that human beings were inherently and constantly in search for meaning, and that those who find it survive better, there is, of course, another German psychologist, Abraham Maslow, who is referred to and known by many people. His hierarchy of needs is recited and repeated all over the place. His suggestion was that human beings were forever searching for self-actualization, just as others have suggested that resilience is an innate human attribute waiting to be awakened or to be invoked. He felt that self-actualization was something innate and that human beings thrive when they reach that level of life. In general, resilience includes the competent navigation or management of adversity and stress. Most, if not all, definitions of resilience assume the presence of stress and adversity. In other words, you can't talk about resilience in a harmonious, perfect, peaceful situation. Resilience always emerges in contrast to adversity, stress, and sometimes hostility. I would like to suggest that because resilience includes, among others, the mental and spiritual strength to endure, overcome, or turn around stressful situations, resilience is necessarily also about leadership, including self-leadership, because you can't marshal the mental or spiritual strength to help you endure a difficult situation, to help you overcome or turn around such a situation without having some kind of sense of leadership. And here I include self leadership. I'd like to suggest that resilience is not only an individual attribute, but it is institutional, it is communal, and it is environmental. In other words, institutions that are facing hostile or adverse conditions may be able to appropriate their resilience from deep down in their history, in their identity, in their ambition. Similarly, communities which are facing adverse conditions, whether they be cultural, psychological, or even military, also will need resilience in order to survive such situations. In fact, in my book, I come very close to suggesting that resilience is also something that the environment is able to marshal. It's not merely the people of Marabastad who were resilient in the face of adversity, or the people of Sophiatown, or the people of Valdesia in Limpopo, where I come from. I argue that it is also the mountains and the rivers and the valleys that also contribute to the sense of resilience. In fact, sometimes quite literally, because these have also been under assault by the same forces that give stress to the people. So, my new book, Faces and Phases of Resilience, does not concern itself necessarily with textbook notions or definitions of either leadership or resilience, except perhaps in a rather backhanded and cross-cutting way. So what do I mean by that? I've already given examples of my reference to the rivers between which my village in Limpopo is set. I could also make reference to the artificial hill in Zone 8, Middleland, Soweto, where I was born, the hill made of mine dumps, Yellow Hill, in which we played. And I would like to suggest that that hill has been part and parcel of our resilience, as much as it has been our songs, as much as it has been our actions of protest, either overt or covert, that all of these constitute a resilience for me. But ultimately, when I talk about leadership and resilience, I'm not talking about or thinking about your Nelson Mandela's, even though I do have a chapter in my book on Nelson Mandela, especially his relationship with his father. I'm not talking about your Thabo Mbeki's, although I do have a chapter on Thabo Mbeki and his resilience, especially at the time in September 2008, when he was recalled. That was my focus on that moment in his life as a point of resilience. I am not thinking only about your Desmond Tutu's, although I have a chapter on Desmond Tutu and how he marshals another very important device of resilience, another very important resource for resilience, namely humor. Humor is a very important resource of resilience, especially humor that is not shy to include the subject in it. In other words, so Tutu would make jokes about his big nose and about his simple name and so on and so forth. And that was part and parcel of his resilience. The people of Uganda, when Idi Amin was in power, survived by telling jokes about Idi Amin, some real, others actually made up, like the suggestion that he once addressed the Queen of England saying, today I want to undress you before the people, which may or may not have happened. But it helped the people of Uganda survive that turbulent and very difficult period in their lives. So humor is a very important resource of resilience, especially for leaders who are able not only to laugh at themselves, but also to laugh with others and not necessarily to laugh at others. For me, in this book, I go back to what I call the roots of resilience and leadership. And what are some of those? I look at the role of grandmothers in the creation, nurturing, sustenance, and education of leaders. Grandmothers, especially grandmothers who haven't been that far to school, often get taken for granted. I include myself as one who has been shaped and nurtured by my own grandmother. And I'm not alone, but let me say something very briefly about my own grandmother. Because in my book, I use research, I use evocative narrative, I use memory, I use imagination to propose and invoke the resilient leadership of, among others, the old illiterate woman who taught me. And listen to this, she taught me the art and craft of listening. She taught me the art and craft of reading, and she taught me the art and craft of writing. She couldn't read herself, she couldn't write, but she taught me how to. In fact, in my early teens, my task was to write letters dictated to me by her, my grandmother. And as I read the letters for her, which came from her brothers who worked, one worked in Hammanskraal and another in Krugersdorp, she would constantly interrupt me. So I reread what had been written. And she would then say, read again, because what you just read does not make sense. And I would have to change either the tone or the accent or discover that actually I had misread initially. She would correct me. She would correct the sense, the tone, the diction of my reading and my writing. So often as I read, she would say, read again. And often as I wrote, she would say, I didn't say that. I said. In other words, listen again to what I said. And she would then rephrase and make sure that the tonality and the meaning and the communication were not only precise, but correct. So I would argue that I learned more about reading and writing and listening from her than I did from my primary school A-E-I-O-U teachers. I learned much more from her. She also happens, my grandmother, to be the person who walked me to school on my first day at school. In fact, she didn't walk me to school. She literally dragged me to school, kicking and screaming. And she, in her ignorance, really believed that classroom education would transform me into a medical doctor, a clerk, or a school principal. And here, this is a woman who was born the year of the founding of the ANC. She was born just a year before the heinous Land Act of 1913. She was a victim of land removal. She was forced into farm labor in the farms that sprawled along the northern banks of the Livubu River. And from that, working there, that's how she brought up her 3 children, and later all of us her grandchildren. Now, is she a leader or not? Is she resilient or not? And I want to suggest that before we move to the Obamas of this world, and I do have a chapter about Michelle Obama in my book, because I do think that there are lots of things we can learn from her. But I suggest that before we go to such people, we should consider such simpler people who will never win any prize, who will never get a national order. Consider the manner in which they have been resilient and the manner in which they have led their families, but also led communities. I speak about the community in Limpopo where I grew up, where the people used humor to deal with the power and influence, often negative, of the missionaries, because this was a missionary station, as well as the power of the colonizers, who both of whom had put a lot of pressure on them. So, for example, the missionaries did not allow the singing of traditional songs, especially the dancing that came with it. They thought it was not acceptable and evil. And the people in the village had a joke. And the joke was that the only reason the missionaries did not allow sex before marriage is because they feared that traditional dancing could lead to sex before marriage. And with that, they were able to survive this cultural onslaught that they were facing as a community. Now, take my colleague Chilizima Rwara. He goes to Case Western University in Cleveland, Ohio, USA. And he obtains his Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering cum laude. He then goes to Cambridge, where he completed a PhD in artificial intelligence. Guess who he says was his inspiration in all of this? He himself says it, and he has written about it, that there was a woman called Tshwane Marwara, his grandmother, and that she was his first engineering teacher. And the way she did it was that she used to make clay pots and mats, and she used to brew beer. And he would then accompany her as she went about conducting this trade, different trades that she was doing. He watched how she went about selecting the correct clay for the pots. He watched her knit the mats that she was doing. And watching her inspired him to go and do a master's degree on fault identification using neural networks and vibration data. Because his grandmother would make a pot, would know how long to keep it in the fire, and then she would knock on it and she would know which ring of the pot meant that it was ready or not ready. And so the engineer in him was born there. Now, what is it that teaches a young girl from KwaMakuta, Amazimtoti, outside Durban, who is the second of two children to her parents? What is it that teaches her to be so ambitious, to dream so big, that she manages almost literally to imagine a yellow brick road across KwaMakuta? At that time, KwaMakuta was a very violent place. In fact, when there was the KwaMakuta massacre, she was lucky to be already at Inanda Seminary studying there. What is it that made her love books and fairy tales so much that she used this to transport herself mentally and literally out of a very restrictive situation to become what she has become all over the years, now with a doctorate from Germany, and now as the Vice Chancellor of the Central University of Technology. I tell her story also in the chapter. And as we learn about what it is she was up against and how she rose out of that situation and continued to benefit, if you like, from a situation where other people were not able to, becomes the subject of my reflection on that chapter. I will not touch on everyone, but please, talking about grandmothers, take Siya Kolisi, the president we never had in this country. But the only person I know that even President Ramaphosa wanted a selfie with, because he brought us the World Cups. He is a leader, an amazing leader, and he himself says in his book that I never studied leadership, but I know what transformative leadership is all about. If you remove his grandmother from his story and from his childhood, the grandmother who used to live with him and several other siblings in a small little house, Ezwide, and how he used to help her sell beer in order to survive. You will not understand how Siya Kolisi became Siya Kolisi if you don't tunnel back and touch on his mother. The same goes for Chogomayegiso. In this case, it was mainly her father. Imagine 14, 13 years ago, Chogomayegiso is taken to a hill somewhere in Nelspruit where there was a dilapidated golf course. And she was told, you have to establish a university here. That university at that time only existed in her mind. But if you go to that hill today, you will find a most beautiful university that she led and created, not single-handedly, but certainly single-mindedly. And I could talk about other people of whom I write. I write about Puleng Linkabula at UNISA. I write about Tsakani Maluleke, the Auditor General. And I complain in my reflection about them because when Puleng Linkabula is appointed, the headline says, UNISA appoints the first Black woman Vice Chancellor. For me, that kind of approach credits UNISA. Why did it take UNISA so many years, 100 years or so, before UNISA could appoint a Black woman as Vice Chancellor? Why not say the headline? Why are the headlines not saying a brilliant woman takes the helm at UNISA? Or instead of saying the Auditor General Office appoints the first woman and the first Black woman, why don't you say an accomplished woman leader has taken leadership at the Auditor General's office? So it's things like those that shows you that even when we have these resilient and amazing leaders, I don't know that we always learn from them. We always understand from them. And maybe the final example I can give, and I can give other examples of resilience in leadership. Somewhere in Zibidiela, the people of Limpopo called it the Namuneng. In the 1980s, there's a young boy who is effectively a nurse for his grandmother. His grandmother is bedridden. She is a quadriplegic. She also has, from time to time, breathing problems and heart problems. But he knows what medication to give her at 12 o'clock, what medication to give her at 4 o'clock, and he goes to school and he runs back to check on his grandmother. But guess what? This partnership between this boy and his grandmother is such that everything he knows, he is taught by her from that position where she is lying horizontally because she's quadriplegic. She teaches him everything about looking after cattle and goats because she had inherited some and was the owner of cattle and goats. She teaches him how to milk cattle. She teaches him how to live, how to do life. She teaches him how to love. And she also helps him pass his matric. And above all, she commissions him. She says, my boy, you must go to medical school so that you can come back and heal people like me. And of course, he does go to Natal, the medical school. And in the first year, as he's writing exams, she passes on. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about Musa Mushavel, the current Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Town. Without his grandmother, the story would have dimmed a long time ago. Now, what kind of leadership is this that the grandmother is performing here? What level of resilience is this? Now, some of you may know that film, The Bone Collector, where Denzel Washington is the cop that is a quadriplegic lying in bed in some hospital and issuing instructions to his partner on what to do and what to say until they are able to solve a crime. Such was the partnership between Musa Mushavela and his grandmother. We make a mistake when we go to the textbooks that talk about positional leaders to learn about resilience, to learn about bounce back, to learn about turning around adverse conditions, when in fact we have an abundance of many, many lessons in our own communities. And maybe I should stop there for now. And if there are any things that I may need to add, I can add. I mean, I have many examples. My book has got 49 chapters, the first 8 of which are about my own life. Thank you very much, Professor, for the opportunity.
Thank you, my professor, and indeed, so that our colleagues may buy the book. Otherwise, they may not they will not want to go and buy the book. But wonderful there, wonderful Professor Maluleke, and all of us here, and I'm sure, as you've said, earlier on, one by one, can say so many things about our grandmothers, how they nurtured us. But because I respect these men and women who are here, Prof, I know that they are very busy people. I always want to give them time. I don't want to be the one who speaks a lot. Maybe if I may just respect my professor and my leader there, Professor Tinyiko, the Vice Chancellor, and the principal at UJ there, as you can see, is there. Over to you, my Professor Mpedi.
Thank you very much, Prof Mazwe. It's always a pleasure to be part of this Wednesday evening gatherings. Prof Tinyiko, good evening. Thank you so much, my brother, my colleague, my friend, my mentor. Thank you so much for sharing. This. I mean, you are right. I'm one of the lucky few. I have my own copy. I'm not through it yet, but I can tell you, I stop and just laugh and laugh and laugh and picture you. Thank you so much for being the person you are, not being selfish, because you could have written the whole book about your own story and the journey you've traveled. But you brought in all similar stories just to emphasize the importance of resilience. There is a lot to take. Already the important point that resilience is about leadership. And it's not an individual attribute. It can also be institutional. You know, from the valleys, the hills, real hills, to the artificial ones. The way I see it is that as leaders, inspiration for resilience is everywhere, and we must not go out there thinking we have to look for something fancy elsewhere. We must look around us. But before we run to textbooks and say X at university, Y overseas said this, we must start with these experts that we grow up with that are sitting there. I think our biggest problem is that if you don't have degrees, you don't have titles, we tend to think you've got nothing to offer. And it's time we go back to basics, even if those that led us and guided us in our youth, in our childhood are still not there. The challenge is, which I'm taking with me, is that we have to go back and reflect on our time with Rahulu, our time with Umakulu, and say, but what was she teaching me? I mean, I'm touched by what you said about your grandmother being basically your first and proper teacher in terms of to listen. Your tone can mean anything. It's different. And these are the small things that as leaders, we don't pay attention to. I can speak the whole evening. I just want to thank you for the person that you are, unselfish. You could have filled the book, as I said, with your own story and had an impactful book. but we brought everyone. I mean, too many vice chancellors to mention, our brother Chiliti, and the important point that we should not forget as leaders is this thing that when a person is appointed, we tend to say the first black this. I mean, I'm sorry and condolences to our Catholic brothers and sisters. Now you look at the headlines, oh, we might have the first black pope. It's not about just the color, it's about what the abilities a person brings. So you touch on this point that a first woman, but this person, before being a woman, she brings a wealth of experience that must be recognized. So we need to have that mind shift. And with this book, we are going to continue to grow in our resilience and spread the gospel so that we can change these mentalities. Thank you so much, professors. I really enjoyed this interaction. And thanks, colleagues, for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my professor. Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, we now can interact with the speaker. You can do that by raising your hand. There is a button there where you can raise your hand, or you can do that via the chat room. I can see that there are very good comments there in the chat room, but if there's anyone who wants to ask the question, you may do so now. Maybe if we can just go to the chat room while our leaders are coming. I see there Dr. Mvusi Songelwa. Oh yes, I like the focus of resilience dedicated to grandmothers. And I know that she really likes that topic. She wrote a book on Umalusi, the leadership, powerful book there, which depicts a leader as Umalusi. Very wonderful book there. Themba Nkuna, your grandmother was a powerful leader. Wow. And then there is a very good from our professor there, Professor Mdluli, a home package there, which is so long. Professor Mdluli, you are still here, or rather, I hope you are still here. Would you like to take us through there to say a few things? Otherwise, to read that, it will be huge. It will be, yeah, I may not do justice.
Thank you, Prof Majola. Yes, and let me also appreciate the presentation by my old colleague. We met in the 90s. We come a long way. To me, he is also a symbol of resilience, where we saw him being undermined, being ignored, and he didn't give up. And from that, one learned the lesson. To be the best, you must be able to handle the West. To be the best, you must be able to handle the West. I think what we've learned today, very key point is that resilience is in all of us. It's an innate human attribute, which is just waiting for anyone to trigger it and awaken it. Resilience cannot be triggered from outside. It can only be triggered from within. It is a personal, it is an individual thing. But let's add from what we have learned today here, it's not just an individual attribute. It is institutional, it is communal, it is environmental. I like the example reference which both Prof Manduleke and Prof Mpeli gave of the rivers. Remember this quickly. A river doesn't flow straight. It flows in zigzags. And that is when it is showing its resilience against rocks, against trees, against hardships. The river refused to stop. It negotiated its way through. And from that, we can learn something. And also, let me touch 2 points quickly. One, resilience and humor. And it must be very clean humor. It must be humor which includes a subject. And just to underline what Prof has taught us, resilience must focus on laughing with people, not laughing against people or laughing at other people. And last challenge, which I would love that we take this home, is that as we go back to say resilience is everywhere, particularly where we all grew. let's always remember, when we learn from our grandparents, the challenge to you and I is what type of symbols and sources of knowledge and wisdom are we going to be to our grandchildren tomorrow? Both Prof Mpeli and Prof Maluleke have demonstrated, you demonstrate resilience when you are yourself, not when you are imitating other people. What is the message here? An original will always have more value and resilience than a photocopy. An original will always have more value and more resilience than a photocopy. Be yourself. Muhammad Ali taught us, don't just be yourself, but be the best of yourself. Others will learn from you.
Thank you very much, my professor. Thank you. Prof Maluleke, I will ask you to respond, but let me just respect my sister there, the minister or the Deputy Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Sis Nomalungelo Gina. After her, then I'll ask my professor to respond. Deputy Minister, over to you, sis.
Thank you very much, Prof. Greetings to Professor Maluleka. Greetings to, I always tell you, Prof, as to say, these classes are a little bit intimidating. The moment you get into the crowd, everyone is Prof, is Doc. You feel a little bit intimidated, but it's good. We learn every day. These are sessions where I really enjoy them. We learn quite a lot. I just want to thank Professor Maluleka for today's session. I can't wait for tomorrow, Prof, to go and get this book, Faces and Phases of Resilience. Really, you've just triggered the interest. I thought today, Prof, the session was a little bit too short. I'm not sure whether it's because I was so much interested. It felt as if Professor Maluleka can continue, you can just continue to listen to him or not. He was just sharing with us. Thank you very much for this. Really, I think even as a country, when we talk to the question of how resilient we are as a country, we always get as to say, as South Africa, we are a resilient country. We live in a very hostile environment. The hostility, the stress, the hardships, the difficult situations that we are undergoing almost every day. But really, standing the test of times that we are trying to do and trying to be the resilience that we try by all means to try and show. For me, this book talked to each and every one of us. And that is why I was saying such a lecture, Professor, I wish it can be presented to each and every leader. Yes, I think Professor Maluleka was saying when he talks to the leader, a leader can be the leader in a certain institution, you are a leader in your home, everywhere. It's one lecture that needs to get into everyone's ear. I think it can build our communities, build the society, build the country at large. But when he touched the issue of art and craft that he learned from his grandmother, I think even for me, I was even smiling. I then said, when he said he learned the art and craft of listening, of writing, reading with meaning, I said, we are struggling as a country now. You get all the reports saying our learners, our children cannot read with meaning. And those are the challenges that we never faced. Why? When we are in an era where we are saying we are transforming, we are progressing, but we are reversing in such things, in such areas. For me, it says that organic knowledge that we had, the leadership, as an example, Professor Maluleka, where are those things going to? You know, how can we bounce back to such? Those are the reports that really see. We are talking of the Bella Acts and all those things because we're trying to go back to such things. And also, I was so excited when he made mention of VC of the University of Cape Town. Because for me, it's one character who showed character of resilience. When you read about Umusa, you get excited. He applied the University of Cape Town. He was rejected by then because he couldn't fit to be a student at the University of Cape Town, but he did not give up. He said, what is it? How can I be resilient? How do I make sure that I reach my goal? He went, he studied, went to all the University of KZN. Today we are celebrating that he is the VC at the University of Cape Town, where he was rejected at first. For me, that is a sign of resilience, is the kind of leadership that you are looking at as a country. So really, what I can say in summary is to say, this book seemingly is an eye-opener. I can promise you, Professor Malulega, I will get to even your numbers to get to know you after I've read this book from Professor Majola, because after this, I can assure you, I believe all of us, there's so much that we can share and learn from this book. It's one book that I'm looking forward to read. Thank you very much for this beautiful session that we had today. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much, my sister, the Deputy Minister. Thanks a lot. Professor Maluleke, would you like to respond to colleagues? Maybe there are more comments, and then we'll take another round of questions after your response. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I really want to thank all colleagues who commented. It's mainly comments, no real question. And I appreciate the encouragement that I'm receiving. I do want to say there is a special bias towards women leaders in the book. I think that must be said. So, I mean, I have a whole chapter on my mother. I didn't even talk about my mother, who continues to inspire me, even though she died when I was 3. I have a whole chapter on my grandmother, and I also have a chapter on several powerful South African women. Pamela Dube, I referred to her, Tokomayeki, so University of Mpumalanga, Nokuthula Sibiya at MUT, Elizabeth Tsvangarai in Zimbabwe, I referred to her and the perils she went through when her husband died. I have a chapter on Michelle Obama, Antoinette Ntuli, and all through, even the stories that are male, the leitmotif, the force behind them are the women who feature. Professor Mpedi, I actually have a chapter on him in this book, which I have titled The Karate Kid Who Became a Vice Chancellor. You'll know the film The Karate Kid. When I heard his story, it reminded me of the Karate Kid, because he used to do karate as a youngster at the Tshwane High School in Seyfeld Scale in Hammanskraal. He also knows that his mother received a workman's compensation from the deceased of his own father. I think he even remembers that it was 22 rand something per month. Prof, I can't remember the amount, but it's in the book.
222 rands 22 cents.
A month. That's how he and his siblings were brought up. So I tell that story, and I find so much inspiration from understanding where I've known him for a long time, and I interviewed all these people to create the chapters around them, and they trusted me with their stories. So for me, it's a very important. And when I talk about the environment helping us to resist, if you read the first chapters where I talk about myself, in Limpopo, the villages in which I grew up are located between two rivers, Levubu River to the north and the Ritabi River to the south. And in between, there was a tree, a huge tree, which had been given a name, at which all communal meetings took place. The name of the tree is Malumbe. I think that tree is central to the resistance of that community against the onslaught of missionaries and colonialists. And one funny thing, the story that I tell there, is that whereas the missionaries said every house must have a Bible and they must read from the Bible, but these people also had their own religion, and they were not sure whether to shift from their religion to the missionary religion. So the old Bibles were black and red, black on the body and red in the mouth, as it were. And they had very soft pages that were used. Guess what the people used the Bibles for? The resistors. They didn't use it for Bible study or revival. They used the soft pages as toilet paper. And they also used it as to make zols for smoking. It's funny, but it's true. It was a way of resisting. And circumcision schools would take place even though they were not allowed. And at this tree that was in the center, that's where the gatherings took place. So there is a sense in which these environmental markers, the rivers, the mountains, the trees, were part and parcel of the story of resistance of that community. It tried to survive amidst all these pressures that it was going through. Thank you very much, Prof. I think I'll stop there for now.
Colleague, we can take some questions or some thoughts there to Prof. Let me see anyone would like, and if I may ask, please let's make sure that we keep muted so that we don't hear your secrets or your private life there. Let me start with my colleague there, Dr. Sibongiseni Nkolozeli. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Greetings to all the leaders in the call, and special greetings to our professor, our guest speaker this evening. Let me make this comment first, Prof, before I ask the question to our professor. I think it's significant that you invited Prof Tinyiko today in this session because we are celebrating the World Book Day today on the 23rd of April. And what's impressive for me is that you invited an author, not just a respected leader in the entire continent and many parts of the world. And in terms of the World Book Day, I think for those who might not know, it's an annual celebration of all things literature. It's a day to reflect on our enjoyments of books and reading across all generations. I think, if I remember correctly, this day was set up in 1995 to encourage everyone to read more and discover the magical worlds of that books can offer. The World Book Day encourages children to read more of their favorite books. And I think as part of the reason this date in particular was chosen is the fact that some of the famous writers, like the likes of William Shakespeare, died on this day. And if I'm not mistaken, I think even Miguel Cervantes was also died on this day. So in relation to this, the power of stories is very significant, I think, across all generations. And for people who are authors, we are so grateful to them, like Prof Maluleke, because how will we know these stories about, relating to the topic of today of resilient leadership? We know all these famous authors, what they went through before they penned their stories on paper and how their stories changed the course of the world for the better. Now, I'm thinking about Prof Tinyiko's story, especially the story of how he was taught how to read the art and craft of reading, the art and craft of writing and listening. That is very powerful. And I think for most of us who are listening today, there's no way you can remember that. And for me, like many of the the people who commented regarding that this address today, I'm one of the people who was raised by my grandmother. And for me, Prof raised something that I never thought of, because I was one of those people with parents being away in big cities to work. I was raised by my grandfather, and I was one of those kids who wrote letters and read letters for my grandmother, unbeknown to me at that time that I was being taught the art and craft of reading and listening. And today I'm proud to say I'm an author. And unlike maybe with some of my colleagues in the rural, not many of us are authors, but I think now I realize that she contributed a lot by that act that I was not aware at the time. Maybe even to her, she did not know that she was teaching me this skill as I went to school to learn these things, but also her part was very significant in my journey. So now, Prof Tinyiko, considering all of that and what you have learned from your grandmother, I'm thinking with the age of AI, when with the technology that is developing rapidly in nowadays, how can you bring back that art of ensuring, because you've said what we learn in primary school about learning those RAEO that were done back in the days. I love so much when you said that. Today, how can you bring that realization that we do need our parents, our grandmothers to contribute towards helping the current generation to avoid what we hear nowadays being published in media, that the literacy rate in our country is so poor, even though in Africa, one of the developing countries at a faster rate compared to other countries. So I just want to ask you, what could be the solutions that you can adopt and teach to maybe the parents, because parents are one of the leaders that maybe instill some of those characters that develop resilience in our children in our days. I hope that that question maybe is clear for now without having to complicate it furthermore. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Golozeli. Thank you so much. Maybe let's take Dr. Tshwane Mangisa. Yeah, over to you, Dr. Mangisa.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much, Prof Mazwe, and thank you to Professor Tinyiko Maluleke. A profound lecture indeed on resilience from perspectives, different perspectives, that he has shared. Indeed, I must admit, on my part, to say the group or the caliber of political analyst that we used to have, then I think it is late 90s, Professor Tinyiko Maluleke, Professor Somadoda Figeni, and I'm forgetting the other one, Prof, who used to be our, one of the esteemed political analysts back then. From that point of view, I can admit on my part to say the resilience I have now in understanding politics, the nature of politics in South Africa and the continent at large, it is because of the people like, Professor Maluleke, Fikeni, and others who made us to be resilient, made me to be resilient now, in terms of how I understand politics then and now, and perhaps, in future. From that point of view, I applaud, Professor, Tinyiko Maluleke for that. Though we miss it, I understand he can be busy, or he is busy because he's a VC now, of TUT, but we still miss it, from a perspective of having those astute analysis, from a political perspective. But the question that I have for Prof if our grandmothers and women in particular, we have learned a lot from them, and they are, or they were resilient as ever. You know that they've made us to be what we are, today. The question that I have is why there is a lot of GBV, especially against the very same women, that have brought us into this world, have made us, most of us, to be what we are, as leaders today. Why there seems to be, they seem to be targets when we speak about GBV? Is it because of the naivety from, the perpetrators, to say these are the, the same people that brought us into this world, that has made us to be who we are, as people? Any comment on that, Prof? What makes people, to target women such that we want to declare them, to inverted commas, to be closer to non-entities? Why is that, Prof? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Doc. Over to you, Prof Mazwe.
Yes, in fact, a large part of the last section of my book deals with the problem of GBV. I am tempted to respond by saying, get the book and read it, but that would not be fair to the question that has been asked. But I have, for example, a chapter titled "A Map of Our Bloody Country." It is built around a poem by an American poet which is called "A Map of Our Country." And I speak about famous cases of GBV in our country. There is a chapter on Anine Boysen, the 17-year-old who was killed just a day before River Steenkamp, or very close to the murder of River Steenkamp. And it's prose. In fact, it's a half poem, half narrative. And I write about 2 pages about her, reflecting on what is it about us that leads to that. I have a chapter on Mayenziwe Xaba, a student who was killed by a boyfriend. And I reflect on that. And then in another chapter, I speak about how once in Pietermaritzburg, I went to a cinema. And as I walked out of the cinema, there was a woman who was walking in front of me. And the closer I walked towards her, the faster she walked. And I walked faster until she started to run. And I ran and said, "Don't run, I'm not going to harm you, I'm a professor." I was an associate professor at that time. And when she heard that, she ran even faster. I tell the story in the book. And I say she was correct to run, because zero trust is legitimate stance for women, because the abusers are not written, do not have a label that says they are abusers. Even professors can be abusers. So she was correct to run away from me at that time, given the circumstances where we were. So I really reflect on these matters and agonize about them, trying to understand who it is we are as a people, and the problem of men who are violent, and not just the violent ones, but also all the male beneficiaries of male violence, because some may be passive, but they benefit from the lordship of malehood and so on. So I have a few reflections in the book. It's not a topic that escaped me at all in this particular reflection. I do not necessarily provide answers, but I do raise questions about the problem, and also make some broad suggestions about how we could lift ourselves out of it. The earlier question was, how can we bring back that involvement of parents in the bringing up or in the education of their children? It's a poignant question which can't be answered very briefly. I tell the story in the book of how, when I first went to university, having been a Bantu educated person, and I was given an assignment which starts with the question, what do you think? I was floored, because until then, no one had asked me what I thought. Everyone asked me what I remembered. And part of the reason the only thinking part that I had learned was what I was taught by my grandmother, not the school, because the school itself was not really helpful in giving me permission to think, as it were. So I think parents underestimate their role in the education of children. I don't want to say Black parents, but maybe as a Black person, I can say that. I think we underestimate our role as parents in the education of our children, even on the subjects we supposedly know nothing about. We are not, just because parents are not specialists in a particular field or are not educated, does not mean they are ignorant and they are not able to help and to assist and to ask questions and to direct and to guide. I think there's too much outsourcing that is given to the school in the belief that the teachers will deal with it and they will help the students. And maybe both the critical, the encouragement of critical thinking, which I got from my grandmother, and just the sheer presence of parents throughout the school moment is something that I think we need to revive. Now, AI and the times that we go through, I don't think it fundamentally changes the role of parents, because even AI, there's good AI and bad AI. In fact, the next level of discussion around AI will have to do with regulation and the proliferation of bad AI. Bad AI is what produces cyber attacks. Bad AI is what produces the scams. And bad AI is growing, perhaps even faster than good AI. I have a chapter on SKM Patele, just reflecting on his impact. There's a part where SKM Patele tells the story of how and why he went to Lesotho to become a teacher. Of course, there's a bit of he's saying this tongue in cheek, because he didn't leave South Africa happily. He didn't go to Nigeria to write down Second Avenue from there because he wanted to write it from Nigeria. He didn't go to the USA and to France and to all these other countries. He was in flight because of the political situation in the country. But he says, I went to Lesotho because I was looking for a beautiful woman. The name of that beautiful woman is bitterness. I wanted to meet bitterness and to strangle her and get rid of her and out of my system. And of course, he says he was asked a question I think it was at the University of Western Cape or UCT when he was giving a lecture. Have you now gotten rid of bitterness? And he says, not quite, but I'm working on it and I'm getting there. So there's also a sense of the hurt that we as parents have that we have not overcome. And we are therefore unable to assist our children. And maybe there is a deep sense of suspicion of education or even antipathy towards it. I don't know. But I think we have what it takes to overcome this, this problem of non-involvement and non-support for education, and not encouraging our children to be curious and to proceed. I'm not sure if there's a question that I have missed, Prof.
No, it's covered, Prof. You managed to cover all of them. Thank you very much, my professor. I see from the chat room. Let's just read it there a bit. Bridget, this grandmother is my aunt Rahadi. Charles, indeed, not all heroes wear capes. And then Dr. Sipepo Telo there. Today, Prof taught us art of leadership so profound. Prof, resilience is an art work in progress. Thank you, colleagues. Hulufelo there, this is empowering, very profound. Thank you so much. While we are giving him some few seconds, let me just ask this question, Prof. Baluleke, then we'll get into Prof. Zide. I know that Prof. Mdluli did touch on it, that resilience, all of us, we do have resilience, we may have resilience. It's a matter of how do we, ignite it. Do we all born with resilience, or it's a skill that maybe you learn on the leadership journey or in your personal journey, because obviously resilience is not only for leaders, or it's something that each and every child, when he's born, there's this seed of resilience, or it's something that will get it on the road. Over to you.
The easy answer, Prof, is to say it's both and. In other words, it's innate, but it also needs to be cultivated, to be, to be sharpened, to be identified, and to be grown, to be ignited, to use your word, as it were. But it is also possible that along the road, the flame of resilience is sometimes blown away, and it dies in some people, and they give up. And we know of many who are unable to rise above their givens, as it were. They get stuck somewhere. So it's not something that we must, my book is not like an easy set of, there are so many books that says to be a leader, you must have A, B, C, D. Resilience is easy, you must do. Resilience is, it does not always emerge. And sometimes resilience is not about women who are izimbokoto, as it were. Sometimes resilience is about the willow tree, that instead of resisting the wind, it bends until the wind is gone before it straightens up again. So I am trying in this book to have as many definitions and notions of resilience as possible. Even my grandmother felt defeated sometimes. I mean, when I bent her heart at one stage. All the thatch house, the grass that she uses to bend. She was to cover the roof at that time. I bent all of it. Apparently, I was cooking something. I don't know what it is I was cooking, and she cried. She was really defeated, and still she hugged me while the fire was raging, which was caused by me. So resilient is not always a straight line. Resilience is not always a straight line. I think it's important to see that. There's something that I have not mentioned about the sources of resilience. I spoke about environment, I spoke about humor, I spoke about everyone, but there's something else in this book, music. I think there are at least 5 chapters about musicians. There is a chapter about Humour. There is a chapter about Paul Simon, where Paul Simon's work is referenced, where Harry Belafonte is referenced, where Vusi Mahlasela is referenced, where Vusi Ximba, the Maskandi musician, about whom I learned when I was teaching at the University of Natal, and from whom I learned so much, is referenced here. So the role of music in the creation of a resilient society is also something that is often underestimated. But we must not have too simple a notion of resilience, because resilience does not always show up as victorious. Sometimes resilience is like jazz. It takes a long time for it to sink in. It's not bubble gum. It's not people jumping in the street and saying "Siaya Epitor." Sometimes resilience is sitting down and waking up every day, like my father did. You know, the mistake that my father did was to ask me to come to talk to his employers to give me a job during holiday times. I talk about it in the piece on Bree Street, because he worked at number 216 Bree Street. When I worked there, I discovered a father I didn't know I have. My father was called by name by people who were young. You know, I don't think I even knew the name of my father. But they would shout at him and say, Obed, his name was Obed, and he would run. I didn't know that man, because back in Soweto, my father was bossy, he was in his element, he was, and then would go home, he would put on his dobs and become the father that I have. And I said to him, but why do you allow this at work? And he said, just focus on your schooling, get a job, and hold it down. Was that resilience, or was it not resilience? When he looked so, what shall I say, so lame, like a lamb in front of his employers. Maybe it was the weapons of the weak. He needed to buy this time until I finished matric, maybe until I go to university. So we mustn't have the sense that resilience is always being pushy and winning against all odds, and not and not failing at any point at all. Thank you very much.
Okay, Professor, am I audible now?
You are
Yeah,
audible,
Prof.
Professor. Go ahead, my Professor. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, my goodness me. A friend, a brother, a colleague, Tinyiko and I come a very, very long way. A very long way indeed. I think it would be an understatement tonight just to say to him, thank you so much, Tinyiko, for such an insightful presentation. But I think before I express gratitude on behalf of the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development, let me come just to the last example about your father. For me, that was resilience at its very best, because there is a notion that to be resilient, as you indicated earlier on, Tinyiko, is to say amadolo up and toy and all of that. My late dad worked at Stellenbosch University as a laborer, and they took him through the courses until when he retired, he was a head waiter. Exactly what happened with your dad I asked him, because he also would say to me during holidays, I must go work in one of the hotels in the Western Cape. He was meek, humble. And I asked him, he said to me, no. You see, my boy, white people can be very stupid at times. If you show them that you are respectful and obedient, they listen to you. What I'm trying to do is to allow them to believe in their mind that I'm this respectful, obedient fellow. Then they open the door for me to get inside. And when I'm inside that room into which I want to be, I then sit down with them and say to them, guys, this is what I want. Because if I had remained outside of the room, I would not be able to tell them what it is that I want. And so that narrative about your father reminds me of the same narrative about my own dad. And so that was indeed resilience. And Tinyiko, what a beautiful presentation. You know, leadership has got so many facets. We talk about persuasive leadership, transformational leadership, ethical leadership, and all facets of leadership. But today you have given us another perspective of leadership when you emphasize leadership and resilience, or resilience and leadership. But the most important thing that you said to us today, when you related the stories, the anecdotes, and the narratives of leadership, I think that was very profound, as well as the roots of resilience and leadership. You know, citing Toko Maekiso and Puleng Lingabula, it really makes my heart so soft, because I worked with these two colleagues, with Toko at Nelson Mandela University, and with Puleng at UNISA. Very, very, very remarkable women indeed. What a pity that the scourge of pull him head down syndrome, which is typical of, shall I say, male dominated environment. Toko had to move up the ranks, and today I think she's living one of the most incredible universities this country has ever had, having built it from nothing, of course, as a collective, but as a leader, we'll always give credit to her, but she was not alone. That is so beautiful. But when it comes to Puleng, I feel that indeed with the council and those around her, she was able to stand and withstand the test of times when her own leadership was being challenged by us Black people. What a pity that instead of us encouraging one of our own and clapping hands and said, finally, here is a young, promising academic who is taking over the reins of leadership at that university, we were at the forefront of putting her down. But I must commend the manner in which she was able to resist, the onslaught, as it were. So I am very, very touched. And I also was very touched about the examples you cited about Mandela, Thabo, Desmond Tutu, Michelle Obama, etc. There is one, however, that I would also just like to push in, because I have written a book on her, Mama Veronica Zodwa Zonde Nisobukwe, a very, very resilient woman. One of those few women, if not, whose life story challenges have not been so much mentioned. So I have written a book on that, and I'm happy that you have also written so much about the other women. I'm looking forward to reading the book. Unlike my friend there, Professor Mpedi, has already started reading the book, but I'm also like Honorable Deputy Minister Gina, who says tomorrow I'm going to the bookshop to get it. But coming back to the comment that was made by Minister Gina, I think this is a book of all seasons. If you could use your influence, Madam Minister, to have the book prescribed, I think it will change the political thinking of the country. And I'm happy that you have been amongst the leaders who take charge of being at these sessions every Wednesday. I mean, when we're looking at you, we're not looking at you now as minister, but we're looking at you as a leadership colleague. But if your voice in the corridors of power could lead to this book being prescribed, it will definitely change the ideological thinking of the country. Because right now, whether we like it or not, I think the country is moving in an opposite direction, unlike the river, which both Professor Mdluli and Tinyiko mentioned, which twists and turns, but it never goes back. That's the way of really trying to survive the challenges of the country. And so I think the first round was really about comments and commendations, and I agree with those colleagues, as well as the second round, though it was questions, but Dr. Mkolozeli and Dr. Mangisa, the questions were somehow more commendations than questions, in my view. And I think, Tinyiko, you handled those very, very, very exceptionally well. But I heard the colleague there, Honorable Minister Gina, saying that it was very short. But I think that short as it was, it had an impact. And so with those few words, my brother, thank you so much on behalf of Prof Majola, as well as thanking the colleagues who have attended and the colleagues who have participated. We're looking forward to yet another insightful session next Wednesday. Prof Majola, thank you so much, and over to you, my professor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prof Maluleka, your parting shots and your response and your closing remarks, then we'll close the session after that. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Let me close by saying thank you very much for indulging me and for listening to me for so long. I really do not take it for granted. Perhaps to close, I should, having said that resilience is complex and it is not always a straight line, let me close by referring to two anecdotes. Both are in the book. The first one is an anecdote I tell around Michelle Obama and Barack Obama. They are having a meal in a restaurant, and the waiter takes an unusual interest in Michelle. Barack asks, "Do you know this guy? Who is he?" And she said, "No, I was with him at high school. That's where I know him." And then he says, "You see, if it wasn't for me, you would be married to a mere waiter today." And she smiled and thought for a while, and then she said, "Barack, no. If I was married to him, he would be the president of the United States today." That's the resilience, the story of resilience there. Resilience behind the overt resilience before resilience, as it were. The second anecdote comes from my own grandmother. So she was a great storyteller. And often she would tell us stories with a puzzle at the end, which we were supposed to solve. It's a very hot afternoon in Limpopo. Some boys are and quite older people are in the lake splashing, and they've left their clothes on the banks of the river. And a mad village man comes there. He used to limp around the village saying things and singing songs that nobody knew about. And he saw the bunch of clothes that they had left at the banks of the river. He took the clothes and ran into the village. Now, the people inside the lake had a decision to make. Do they run after the madman, shouting, "That guy is mad, he has taken our clothes"? Who would believe them? Everyone would think he was one of sound mind and the naked people were mad. So my grandmother said, what should they do? Do they chase after the madman naked? Or do they stay in the water until it's dark? And then they can walk to the village carefully in darkness so that they are not seen. And of course, would say, yeah, they'd rather wait. And then she would say, but there's another problem. If they walk in the dark, naked, if they are found by anyone, then they would be accused of witchcraft, which was even worse, and they could end up being evicted from the land. So resilience is not always straightforward, and it could take different shapes. Sometimes it takes chasing after the madman while naked. Sometimes it takes waiting until it's dark before you walk out of the lake naked. But thank you very much for indulging me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my professor. Thanks a lot, Prof Maluleke, for your humility, for availing yourself. As Prof Zid has mentioned, you know you're a very busy person, but just for you to avail yourself to this platform, we really appreciate it. And we're hoping to invite you again next time. As we said, this is not your first time and this is not your last time. Thank you so much for empowering us and inspiring us. Ladies and gentlemen, let us meet again next week, Wednesday, same time, same place, same details, everything the same. We'll be having another powerful speaker, another interesting topic that we'll be discussing as well. The session is adjourned now. May God bless you and may God bless Africa. Thank you very much and goodbye. Thank you.